before we dive into the meat of the discussion, I would love the panelists to give a little bit more of a introduction to your background, your experience with the B2B space, and just in general, what you do in your professional career. I'll start with Nat. Go ahead, Nat.
Hello, thank you. And interesting pronunciation because you have an X, but how did you pronounce your name again?
Laxman.
Laxman. Okay, so it is. I thought I heard Jason saying it a different way, but doesn't matter. So hello everybody, I'm Nat. I have been in the tech industry for about 18 years. I come from Salesforce. So I'm the senior director of product marketing here at Kibo. But I was at Salesforce for 8.5 years. I also used to work at IBM, BlackBerry, a whole bunch of other companies. I've done a variety of roles from sales to marketing to basically working with all kinds of MarTech, front end technologies. And I have 3 AI patents. So that would make me an AI expert. I always feel awkward saying that. Yes, here I am. And I love talking about this stuff because one of my big areas of focus here at Kibo is go-to-market motions, especially when it relates to new industries or industries that maybe are not used to buying a certain type of technology. So I'm excited to have that conversation. Over to you, Lexman.
Thanks, Nat, for that quick introduction. Rob, do you want to go next?
Sure, happy to. Hey, I'm Robert Chapman. I'm a principal at 910 Advisors. Way of background, I come from the technology space as well, much from an entrepreneurial lens. Started and sold a couple companies, one successful, a bunch not so successful, which was great learning. I've been in the enterprise consulting space for the last 10 years, predominantly in manufacturing, distribution, and retail, with a deep lens on B2B commerce, B2B order management, and integrations around that and pricing. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Rob. And last but not least, Gaurav, go ahead.
Thank you, Laxman. Thanks for having me over here. Happy to join from overseas. This seems like a pretty fun conversation. Hello, everyone. My name is Gaurav Hemdev. I'm the VP of IT applications at B&H. I oversee all the applications at B&H. We love developing things in-house and not buying too much from outside. So we customize a lot of things in-house. We've got a lot of stuff that's been in place for a very long time. As such, our OMS, our ERP, our WMS, everything is customized in-house. Very, very catered to how B&H operates. I've been here about 12 years now. It's a fun place to be at. What many people, for those that don't know B&H is an e-commerce company. We specialize in electronics, specifically in camera, video, audio. We cater to professionals and prosumers. And we have a big B2B practice as well, where we sell to hospitals, universities, corporates, enterprises. It's the fastest growing part of our business. So we do a lot of B2B for a very long time, and it's probably one of our largest focuses going into the next couple of years. So happy to be here and happy to share on what we do and how we do it.
Yeah, thanks, Gaurav. If I can add to what Gaurav just said, I think anybody who's attended an RF has possibly, I'd bet that you've possibly seen the B&H store. They've got a very, very prominent location on 34th and 9th, and it's almost a tourist destination, I would say, in New York City for anybody who's visiting. Thanks for that introduction. I think we have a great panel with a lot of deep expertise in a topic that's very little understood, I think, and there's a lot of confusion around, and also a lot of buzz around. So very excited to unpack all of this stuff in today's conversation. So just for the sake of the panel and for the audience, the format we'll follow is we'll bat around a few topics between the four of us for the next 35 minutes. We would love for the folks in the audience to in the call here to post questions in the chat group. Keep track of the questions here on the chat, and we'll come back to audience questions at the end of that 35 minutes. So without further ado, I'll just kick it off with first thing that comes to mind as I think about this topic is just a definition of there's a lot of things that B2B can mean, and there's so many different variations of it. So Robert, if you can maybe kick this off with what do we really, when we say B2B and B2B OMS, what are we really talking about here?
Yeah, I think that's a great level set, right? To your point, because a lot of people get B2B kind of confused with D2C and just the different sales motions around those and channel motions. But from our side, right, the way we view B2B is very straightforward. That could be EDI, that could be cataloging, right? That could be B2B websites, B2B commerce engines, right? That could also be as simple as taking wholesale orders from your trading partners, right? Multiple ways to view that. I think in the way we view the lens in a B2B and OMS context is how do we take orders that are not onesie twosie, but take orders from other companies, right? They may require bulk orders, large number of orders, kind of different instructions than a consumer order, et cetera. And then how does that workflow tie into an order management system for fulfillment roles, right? I'm sure everyone remembers the evolution of order management where it started very much direct to consumer, kind of each is based, right? I buy a unit of X, I need it routed the most optimized way. I think to your point, Laxman, we've seen a shift over the last few years where the definitions really become order management should be everything, inclusive of those more specialized kind of B2B motions, right? Of the, can I support cases? Can I support multi-units? Can I support these different pieces? So from our side, the way we define it for our clients is B2B and OMS is any type of mechanism you need to sell to your customer that is in the B2B space. And then you're tying that with the order management component to support those motions and how you fulfill, how you stock, how you track inventory, et cetera.
Right, got it. So it would include go from like things to like wholesale, franchisees, all of that is what you would
Distributors, yeah, distribution,
you would
et
include.
cetera.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Nat, yeah, go ahead. You were going to say something. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I think a lot of the focus in B2B has been particularly commerce or digital experience oriented, and I call this the digital experience iceberg in B2B. So there's a focus on commerce, but not order management, and order management is so vital. Taking into account some of the uniqueness here, obviously you're not going to be dealing with like single items, pick and pack. You're going to be dealing with large orders. But just there's so much cost efficiencies from automating orders and order routing and order fulfillment, because today it's such a high touch for everybody at a B2B organization to be involved with manually processing those orders, that there's this sort of like lack of knowledge or appreciation for including or considering order management as you're revamping your B2B digital experience.
Yeah, it's definitely very interesting. Yeah, so I think a follow-up question on that, Nat. So you talked about the iceberg, and I think B2B commerce has been a buzzword for like the last few, I would say 5 years or so. What do you think is driving this momentum right now in B2B OMS? You hear a lot about it from analysts, from software vendors, from everything saying B2B is the new kind of domain for the OMS platforms to really tackle. What is that buzzword? What is that buzz up all about?
Yeah, that's a great question, Laxman. But I did also forget to mention that I was the founder and host of the Commerce Cloud podcast at Salesforce, and also the Commerce Order here at Kibo, if in case you're interested in listening, following to that. So I spent a lot of time learning from experts and just talking to them and listening. And I think, my experience in the pandemic was everybody rushed to make a digital experience because B2B is so, hands-on, face-to-face. They needed to have something in place. And in that surge, they either did something homegrown, or they just bolted on portals and ERPs, or they rushed into making purchasing decisions without careful consideration. So now they've taken on a lot of technical debt, and they have these potentially expensive and bloated contracts, and their experience is still not great, right? So we are seeing that they're having a rethink of like, did we buy the right thing? So now they're having a rethink of what else do we need? And this is where the conversation of like, have you considered order management comes up? Because I remember, when I was at Salesforce and I used to work with our order management products, the whole concept of B2B wasn't really, it was like surprising that they would even consider that. Now it's more like, I think everybody's getting to the bandwagon where OMS, B2B, we kind of need it, right?
So you're basically saying that with kind of the world becoming more virtual in COVID, that face-to-face interaction or that phone call, that very manual human process got disrupted by a
Huge.
digital commerce experience, and now this is following this. That's very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's my thesis. Yeah, having lived through that, I remember in the height of the pandemic, spending my evenings and weekends just like building demos for B2B and just, being in the thick of it on every B2B interaction. It was insane for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Rob, any thing to add here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to echo what Nat said, right? Obviously, the digitization and kind of the digitization of the B2B experience has been a big shift in the last 5 years. I think another big driver too is people starting to unpack their cost to serve a lot deeper as well, right? In the B2B space and realizing the benefits they saw from kind of the order management components of direct to consumer, unlock their eyes of going, oh, wait, hold on, maybe I could use this same flexible fulfillment model for B2B. Previously, right, I know we all remember this world where I had a DC or a distribution center and it was strictly there for one customer type, right? And we all probably lived through that on this call. Now everyone's going towards, you saw the shift for direct to consumer. Now the market dynamic is, oh, I can go there for B2B as well and just fulfill from multiple places to capture the sell, right, and really drive that forward. So I think we're starting to see much more of that shift too, to where it's, hey, we can split orders as long as customer allows it, right? We can do a lot of different things to meet customer demand that previously people said you can't do that. I think we're starting to see a lot of shift both in the seller's mindset as well as the customer's mindset on how they receive their goods as long as they get their goods, which has driven this evolution as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So say, Gaurav, I want to bring you into the discussion now. So specifically, I know we talked a little bit about the market, but I would love to hear from you. You guys, like you said, are big B2B players. You've always been, even prior to COVID and all that stuff. You've been big B2B players. In your experience and from what you guys do, what is the big difference? And I know Nat touched on it briefly in terms of the characteristics of B2B, but I'd love for you to dive a little bit deeper into what is the big difference? Like, for somebody that hasn't thought about this deeply, what's the big difference between a B2B OMS and a B2C OMS process?
Yeah, absolutely. Just though continuing Nat's train of thought for a moment, I think we also realize that that B2B needs to be treated differently over time. Initially, we've sort of been omnichannel since the early 2000s. We've sort of had B2B and B2C since the early 2000s. So we've been operating that way even without knowing it. But we've sort of tried to fit both of them into the same mold. Over time, we see that things have transitioned. I think, and we feel that the experience with Amazon has sort of changed the experience across the board. A lot of people sort of want the Amazon experience, even in B2B. Why not, right? You get such a great experience on the B2C side, so you want to sort of mimic that on the B2B end as well. But then there's a whole lot more complexity. So over time, we've sort of kept up, but we do feel that this needs a little bit more TLC in order to kind of give the B2B customers what they need. So in terms of the differences, your question, Laxman, I think right off the bat, the number one thing that I would say is number of line items, the number of SKUs on any order is much, much, much more, right, on the B2B side. But I think what we see is it starts from the beginning. So when we do a contract or when we put in a contract, we negotiate a contract, we offer a pricing to a customer, managing those rules, managing those contracts is super critical. And sometimes they can get pretty complicated. So, we may have a customer we sell to, I'll take one example, we sell to ESPN and Disney and all the companies that Disney owns. They all have different contracts. They all have eligibility for some other pricing contracts that they've signed up for. So we sort of need to manage our system to be able to accommodate all that. So when they come and buy from us, picking the right customer, the right contract, so that the pricing sort of follows. That gets pretty complicated, and it's sort of like a commitment. So if we don't manage that well, we may kind of hurt the experience and the delivery. So we take that pretty seriously off the bat, even before we get into the OMS part. When it gets into OMS, you have the complexity of bids and quotes. We see that we get a lot of requests for quotes, right? They may not end up buying at the end of the day, or they may not buy all the items on the quote or the bid that we've offered, but managing that is super critical. Sometimes we have a take the whole quote or leave it sort of a deal, because we may lose money on some items, but we may make money on some other ones. So when we get a purchase order against that bid or quote, managing that is another aspect. And this may not be applicable to everyone, but in our space at least, a B2B customer sort of knows what they want. They're not going to come to us for product expertise for the most part. They come to us knowing what they need, so we don't have to spend too much time educating them as we do on the B2C side. It's more so about the SLA and the delivery and the pricing, right? That's what we sort of manage. the ingestion of those POs could get pretty complicated and pretty time intensive as well. So our call center is busy with a whole lot of that. How do we automate that? How do we get that time down? How do we fulfill those quickly? Then in the fulfillment side, it's again pretty complicated in terms of managing the invoice requirements, the print requirements, the shipping requirements. On the B2C side, it's pretty straightforward. But in many cases, they have separate rules that we need to adhere to. So the whole supply chain for B2B sort of gets a little complicated.
Right, right. And it also sounds like the front end part of, in typical D2C world, we kind of treat these as two separate things. The front end and e-com, and then you just get an order, and then the back end is OMS. It sounds like what you're saying is there's a lot more tighter coupling there with the customer and all that stuff. Yeah, Nat, did you have anything else to add there to what Gaurav was talking about?
Yeah, I think one of the things that people often think about, like, let's say for B2C, I'm buying a t-shirt from Amazon. Amazon's mentioned here already. I might also buy a t-shirt from H&M. I might also buy a t-shirt from Costco. Now you know all the places where I shop, but I'm not committed to buying t-shirts on a regular basis from Amazon. B2B is fundamentally different. When you sign a client, you sign a client. They keep coming back. So it's really customer acquisition isn't the same thing as order servicing. It's way more important. And you might have branches, not stores. And so if you have you're not going to have BOPIS, you will have something called will call, right? So the contractor will stop by the branch to pick up the items they need for their next job site, for example. So you start to have these like nuances. And I would also say that there's a lot more variety in B2B than there is in B2C, whereas like in B2C, you could have like a standardization, like let's say you're talking to a retail apparel. For the most part, a lot of them have similar processes, similar things they're trying to achieve. But when you go into B2B and you're talking about manufacturers that sell fundamentally different products, they are the way that they offer and like the way that they operate is very, very unique. And so you have to take into account the flexibility and customizability of the platforms that you're choosing. You almost want to buy something to build on top of, or you want to make sure that something is technically architecturally sound so you can customize it enough to your liking, more so than in B2C.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things I want to come back to here. I think one of the things you're saying is customer is a critical part of this equation here, whereas in the DTC world, you have millions of consumers, and you don't treat each one. You may treat groups of them, similarly, but here each relationship becomes more important. And I want to come back to that. Rob, did you have anything to add in terms of just processes and differences to what Gaurav and Nat said?
Yeah, I think the biggest one I have for the group is what Gaurav and Nat both hit on. At the end of the day, D2C is a single motion. You're buying X product at X price. It might have a coupon with it, and you might buy 3 or 4, and it's going to the same address. Everything's negotiated on B2B, to Gaurav and Nat's point, right? From pricing to discount structures to quantity, minimum quantities, to even packaging, right? It's just everything is bespoke typically. And to Nat's point about flexibility, that's key. But ultimately, the motion's completely different because it could be different by customer, it could be different by product, it could be different by everything, right? It's not a one-piece motion the same way it is in D2C.
Yeah, makes sense. So just coming back to Nat, to some things you said, and I want to kind of pivot to a little bit more on the technology side, because a lot of our audience is technology here, or involved in technology decisions. And I think you touched on some of this already with talking about the customer implication. And I think Rob, you touched on things, and Gaurav, you touched on things. From a technology perspective, what is unique about a B2B OMS versus a B2C OMS?
Yeah, I think, in B2C, you definitely want to service orders blindly, whereas in B2B, that could get you in hot water. I don't know who the customer was, but I have heard this use case from one of our partners. It was a roofing manufacturer, and they had a roofer who placed an order, a panic buy, because they thought they were going to win a big bid. And then they took out a lot of the inventory out of the supply for that region. And then the original roofing supply manufacturer couldn't fulfill their existing long-standing orders with, solid clients. And so what you're looking at here is a situation in which a B2C blanket rule applied to B2B just doesn't work. You can't just fulfill orders blindly. You can't just not know how much inventory you have left over. You have to be able to calculate how much is coming in on a regular basis that you need to have provisions. So things like demand forecasting become important. Subscription, which we can reframe as auto replenishment. So if you think of your buyers as auto replenishing their supply from you, that needs to be like ongoing, something that's almost mandatory, I would say, in B2B. I would say order release prioritization is really important. So knowing which come first, which orders need to be fulfilled in what order, and then real-time inventory is super important, making sure that you're actually fully stocked at that location, so you're not routing orders in a way that doesn't make sense, or too far or too close, or depleting a distribution center sooner than you need to. And I would say actually composable, ironically, or modularity, for those not in tech, but composability is more important for B2B than B2C, which is kind of wild, because you think, well, headless and composable is very technical. This is like, for the higher end B2C companies. But when you think about it, the experiences you're building in B2B, every single company will have something unique. There's going to be some sort of field service, potentially field service component. There might be a special app that you have to make for the reps. There might be your application may have more functions within it, especially if you think about like industries like automotive beyond what's offered in the standard. So there's very few companies that will say, yes, we're B2B and we can use your storefront template. It's like, no way. We're going to have to erase that thing and build our own experience. And this is where they're also integrating into like, ERPs, a whole bunch of other systems. And so composability, integration, API strength becomes a lot more important of a technological consideration. And yet, as some questions here, I see some questions coming in are alluding to, we don't have the technical maturity necessarily within the space to make those decisions. So we're in a bit of a quandary right now as an industry where this transition will be slow. More education is needed on why this particular aspect of tech is, I would say, essential in delivering a good B2B experience.
If I can follow that up with one question there, and I think a lot of things make sense, Nat, and a lot of things, especially things like composability and flexibility, are things that we've already tackled in the B2C front. Do you see B2B as an extension of B2C, or do you see that as a complete, from a product technology capabilities perspective, or do you see that as fundamentally two different things, or is there a point where these two kind of unite and meet as well?
There's definitely a crossover. Like, this is sort of partial to Kibo and how Kibo functions. I think what B2B companies want is a B2C like experience, right? So they want to benefit from what B2C is already experiencing today, because what's happening is the new buyers, new influencers are millennials. Newsflash, we're getting old. Sorry, guys. But we're also now going to be making those decisions. And we have experience with Amazon. We have experience with B2C. So we want that similar level of experience. With B2B, we're not going to settle for like antiquated portals. And that may actually be make or break for your brand. Like if you as a supplier are competing with somebody who has a better digital experience, where is that buyer going to go? The people that make it easier to buy, or the people that make it harder to buy and harder for them to do their business, right?
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Rob, did you have anything that you'd like to chime in on here in terms of features and capabilities from a tech perspective?
Yeah, I think the biggest one to Nat's point about the chat people get hung up on is everyone thinks it's ERP specific and you must have an ERP to do this stuff. This came up actually a couple of weeks ago with another client that we have. They said, ERP doesn't support that. And it's like, well, correct. ERP is not going to support a lot of things, right? It's only going to support a certain set of price structures, certain set of discount structures, certain set of things, right? Because it's built in that way. I think to Nat's point, back to composability as well as just the new architecture future, most companies are much more moving to where you can have your core financials in the middle and your financial source of truth in the ERP, and you build around all that with these pieces from a B2B perspective, right? For years, it's always been that way for D2C. To Gaurav and Nat's point, we're just now getting there for B2B, where people are starting to move that direction. Let me unbolt these things for B2B and now do the same thing I did for D2C. And through that shift, right, you unlock the same benefits you have for D2C as well. But definitely don't get hung up with the same, my ERP has always done it this way. It's the only thing that can do it. B2B and these other solutions have progressed so far from a capability set perspective that you'd be surprised they may even outpace your ERP and even some of the newer ERPs in the block for their B2B capabilities.
Yeah, Gaurav, I know you guys don't, you mentioned already that you kind of built a lot of your technology over the years, and that's kind of your approach. Do you guys, when you have a new requirement or a capability that you want to build, do you think differently B2B, B2C wise, or how do you approach this? You also touched on the Amazonization of the experience for your business customers versus your consumers. How do you approach when you have new capabilities, new features? How do you think about that from a technology perspective?
So, Laxman, I think over time, we've realized that we need to look at it differently. But in the past, we've sort of tried to bundle it all together. I was smirking a little bit when Nat spoke about the portals. because we've sort of redesigned our portals like 3 times or 4 times already, and we think that we need to do it a 5th time because the experience expectation is changing so much that we need to sort of keep up with it, right? And we it sort of started off as the same B2C experience, but over time the experience expected is so different and the requirements are so different that we feel like there's a lot more features that are required on the B2B front. And we've also had conversations most recently to sort of split these up completely so that we're not kind of trying to work on them together, because it could sort of limits us over time, right? When you combine the B2C and the B2B experience. So we're looking at kind of breaking these up and working on it separately so that we can kind of move faster on the B2B front. B2B customer expects pricing on the spot, creating bids on the spot. They don't care about the Mother's Day sale, right? They don't care about the promotions you're running. So it's like everything is a different type of experience. They know what they want, as I said earlier, but they're very tech savvy as well. So they want the experience in a very technical way. Also, we're seeing there's a lot of portals out there like the Coupa and the SideQuest and what have you, where people are going and shopping there, and we need to sort of integrate with them with the punch in, punch out capability, and then providing those technologies like advanced the ASN notifications and what have you. Adding all this functionality onto the B2C front slows us down from a feature capability perspective. So we're trying to kind of break it up and sort of move faster on the other side.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. I think one thing, Rob, I wanted to come back to you to start on is this. There's I think a big elephant in the room when we have these discussions on B2B, on where the line between ERP and B2B is drawn. Every company has an ERP, and I think a lot of those ERPs have been doing this function for a long time, right? This order management function. Where do you think they are falling short today? That really necessitates or justifies kind of this separate domain called a B2B OMS. And what are some of those distinctions between and that's what I'm trying to really unpack here is what's ERP versus what's B2B. Yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts, and then I can follow that up with Nat and Gaurav. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. To your point, that's where the sticking point hits when it comes to what do I do for the future of my ERP. With SAP sunsetting ECC in the next few years, right? That's definitely a topic of hot conversation is where does this functionality go that I've monolithed and lived with for so long, or EBS going to Fusion Cloud, right? So on and so forth. It's the number one question we get asked across the board is where is that line? And the number one answer we like to give people is, well, how much flexibility do you need? That should be the driving force on where your line is. There's not a silver slam dunk of you must go B2B OMS or you must stay ERP. It'd be great if it was such a bulletproof answer. It's not, right? At the end of the day, if your business is simple, you may be able to get by with keeping your core ERP. If you just fulfill the standard customer types, you don't need any price discount flexibility, right? You're kind of meeting those needs. You're probably not going to see many benefits by going to a B2B OMS, right? If you're truly just doing the basics. It's when you desire flexibility, you desire speed of fulfillment, you desire flexibility of fulfillment, you desire the same flexibility capability you have for your D2C customer base for B2B. And I think to Nat and Gaurav's point, everyone is moving that direction from a D2C perspective with expectations in B2B of the same concept. So even if you're not there yet, you're likely headed there. But to your actual question of where's the line, I would say the line is this. ERPs traditionally we see for financial inventory. That is what they're great for. That's what they should be used for. They should be your financial source of truth. You should start pulling pieces out that are not beneficial. Should it do your order book, right, for B2B? We see that getting moved out more and more. Should it be your source of truth when it comes to inventory promising? We see that getting moved out more and more, right? Because at the end of the day, you want speed of fulfillment, speed of service, speed of capability, flexibility of fulfillment, and also capability to provide flexibility for discount pricing, et cetera, that most ERPs just cannot do and they're not suited to do, right? So the line we see is where do you want your flexibility and capability to live? And if you just need the basics, keeping your ERP, if you really want flexibility, speed to market, and value add to your consumers from a service perspective, go ahead and go with more best of breed B2B OMS kind of around it.
Yeah, one other area I've heard, and I want to pick your brain on this, Rob, is in terms of having a proliferation of different brands reaching out to the same customer, or of these conglomerates having different channels and different salespeople trying to talk to the same customer. Is there a dimension of that as well with this ERP OMS conversation, of aggregating, the experience across multiple, channels and stuff like that?
Yeah, great question. That is where ERPs typically fall short, to your point, because I have one buyer and I have one target. OMS definitely provides the flexibility to where it can be one experience regardless of what brand I'm purchasing under, or you can still split it out and have separate brand experiences. Back to Nat's point about portals, right? That's the beauty of OMS and B2B OMS especially. You have that flexibility to serve your customers in the way they want to be served, be it single portal, multiple buying points, multiple buyers, multiple price lists within those brands, etc. So absolutely, as you go more omni, and you go especially omni B2B inside of these customers, multiple ship tos, multiple branches, multiple outlets, B2B is definitely much more of a lens at that point as well.
And even the definition of omni sounds like, from what Nat you were saying, and maybe you can kind of chime in here, itself is different. What is your perspective on this point, with the ERPs, and how do you guys, as an application vendor, I'm sure you encountered this a lot, and as somebody trying to market to this audience, how do you distinguish, this B2B OMS space from ERP when you run into that challenge?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's important for us to take a moment of silence for ECC. You have served us well, but now it's time. So now that we can move on from that, I think, look, there's lots of stuff that your ERP is going to do. You got to start to siphon off functionality. So this is where we really focus in on being able to fit in, or what I call integrated modularity, meaning that you don't have to do a rip and replace. You're just picking and choosing what you want to bring in from ERP into OMS, so that OMS can do the real work of order routing, order management. There's also a consideration of, I think Gaurav's hinted at this, which is that there's a proliferation of ordering, meaning that ordering is not just now a single portal channel. Ordering may happen in a marketplace. It may happen through a third party, right? So now you have this through an agent potentially in the future. So now you have an expectation of fulfilling from anywhere to anywhere, right? So the idea of cheap and fast delivery, it doesn't sort of, move away just because you're in B2B. So people still expect that, and they, attribute that to the brand regardless of where they buy. And so now it's even more important for you to have specific functionality to optimize those orders, to make sure that those orders are delivered on time, to make sure that you're informing the customer of when they will be arriving, where. And then there's also this element of, like, for OMS customized to B2B specifically, it might have some sort of element of project related, right? So you might have a project, so you might have different delivery sites, and you might, it doesn't make sense for so-and-so that's working on a project to accept an item when they're not ready to accept it. And so there's more granularity needed in terms of times of delivery, in terms of when, where, how frequently. And all of that, all those customizations, that would be extraneous for ERP. That should really live in order management.
So I think what you're saying is it's ERPs are better at kind of like the more stable processes of flowing things once it's all done, but the dynamic nature of the order processes and kind of how different businesses may be reacting is where you see a big gap in what the ERPs are.
Correct. Yeah, I
Doing.
think that's
Do you
bang
see?
on. Yeah, bang on.
Do you see ERPs actually now stepping into this domain as well? Are they expanding into this domain as well? Or do you still see a clear distinction between the OMS world and the ERP world in this case?
I mean, the only way ERPs could step into this is if they made their own versions of order management systems, or if they acquired order management systems and they recognize that it's a gap that they have. That could happen. Like, I think that, like, an example would be, like, let's say you have your order processing today in an ERP, but the batch process to update those may be a 24-hour cycle. That's too slow for the in-flight real-time inventory analysis, the order modification that you need to do for somebody that's placing an order that's large compared to other customers. Like, there's a lot more that happens in a day. A day refresh is not fast enough. And so, I think it's all a function of where ERP came from. ERP came from databases. It came from backend systems. The speed with which commerce moves is a lot faster, and that requires a totally different architecture that's not bottlenecked by database calls. That's based on web service calls, right? So this is like the speed issue between commerce systems and ERP systems.
Yeah, I'm smiling because this brings to mind this whole concept that I think it was McKinsey who brought this concept of a two-speed architecture of the ERP speed and the commerce speed. And I think
Correct.
that was all said in the context of consumers. And I think that same concept is now coming to play, or play in the B2B space as well, of two speeds. And you're spot on that, I think ERPs may acquire or build their OMSs, but still we're not talking about vendors here. We're talking about domains, and the domains are different. Is I think what we're saying here. Gaurav, did you have anything to add here on that? I know you guys, if you think about this as one thing or two different things in terms of how you structure your, I don't know how you guys think about that.
So I was hoping you wouldn't come to me, Laxman, because we are such an integrated organization where our ERP and our commerce system, our fulfillment system, all works together. They are different systems, but we are constantly kind of real time calling, updating, because it's complex. You cannot wait for this, as Nat mentioned, the batch process. You just cannot. So when we even show an item on our website, we ensure that we have inventory for it. When we accept the order real time, we know we should be able to fulfill it, because to us, and I'm sure every retailer is sort of doing that, our SLA means the world, and we will not break that SLA even if we have to pay extra. We make sure that when we are fulfilling a B2B order, we don't deplete our internal inventory, because we have an SLA that we want to maintain. Based on that, we real time make decisions about, if we're going to do a drop ship, or we're going to bring it in and then show the real time SLA to our customers to when they're going to get it. Finance updates on the inventory postings happens also real time upon checkout. So we sort of do everything in one. So it's hard for me to answer the question as to where the line is, because for us, there is no line.
Yeah, so you guys have already kind of integrated all of this in a composable way, where all of these updates are flying around in real time. So you guys have already evolved yourselves to that place, it sounds like, where most folks want to go. I want to pivot slightly to a different topic. I think you mentioned this in your comment, Nat, agents and AI. I know, there's a lot, the recent chat GPT, buy from, I don't know what they called it, but it's a zero-click shopping or whatever that they call it. So that's the big thing in B2C commerce, of course. What are you seeing, or what's your point of view in terms of where this is all headed? Of course, it's all, nobody has a crystal ball. Everybody's is thinking about this stuff now, but would love to get this panel's starting with you, take on, where do we see B2B commerce and order management? And I want to expand the lens to commerce also, in terms of where do we see that going with AI?
Great question. And by the way, I love hearing from Gaurav, because everything I'm like, this is what should we be doing? Gaurav's like, yep, that's what we're doing. So it's always great to see like an example of somebody doing it right. It's like really satisfying to me. So thank you. But I think for agentic, and if we define agentic AI or AI agents as autonomous processes that are intelligent and use LLM to understand context and execute. And just, full disclosure, we launched our agentic AI commerce offering this year. We're broadening it into both commerce and order management. So we have a ton of AI agents that do productivity stuff, like configure promotions, pricing, help you create order routing rules, set safety stock. And then we're anticipating to lean into more optimization. For B2B, I think the opportunity is almost greater than B2C, which is kind of fascinating. I think sometimes B2B organizations will say, well, we want to wait and see for what B2C is going to do. But actually, I almost call this like the leapfrog moment, like the moment where B2B may actually adopt this technology earlier than B2C. Like, great example, Gaurav mentioned customers may already know what they're buying, but they may have specific technical questions about a product because the products are more complicated, just to make sure that they're buying the right product. And all of that could be offloaded to a buyer agent, right? An agent that can answer questions, answer, what are my entitlements, what are my terms of service, answer all these questions that a seller would handle today, because there's like over reliance on sellers manually. So agents have the opportunity to pitch in and facilitate those conversations. We also have a lot of issues at the product data level. tools. So there's a lot of product cleanup that could happen, and agents could help with cleaning that up because they're experts at moving unstructured data into structured data. So think of like, say, dumping a huge technical document or pulling from an unstructured data set that you are trying to incorporate for commerce purposes, and having those agentic tools organize that for you and put it in the right place in the right part of the product attribute. So from an AI perspective, there's a ton of opportunity. And if you want some like really out there ideas, by the way, these are not all my ideas. I talk to a lot of very smart people and I just sort of like steal their ideas. But have you even heard of like Jason Greenwood? You may know him as a B2B influencer, talking about agentic to agentic commerce and how the B2B could be the tip of the spear. Like imagine if you had a both buyer and a seller, represented by two AI agents being able to negotiate on your behalf, to get deals done, to get contracts ironed out, to get the punch out, figured out, straightened up. So that could be like agentic to agentic may sort of be first adopted in B2B. But there is sort of a long tail of like what I'm talking about now. People may be like, oh, we're like very far from that. And I think the good news is it's on vendors to solve that problem. And we are building tools very, very quickly right now to facilitate and give that kind of AI tooling to B2B that they need.
Right. So I think if I were to just synthesize what you're saying and just trying to process it, what you're saying is there's a lot of manual steps in the B2B flow compared to the B2C flow. And therefore, it's right to actually leapfrog in automating those. And I'm assuming there's two ways to think about that. One is to eliminate the human, which I think is of course one option. But I think maybe the more realistic option and the more near real-term opportunity may be to augment the human with the tools to make it easier for them to serve and better. Is that kind of the point you're making here?
Yeah, augment and optimize the human. Like for example, not having to write all of your product descriptions, being able to ask a merchandiser agent to generate your SEO tags, being able to ask a customer service agent to make changes to orders or create new rules, being able to talk to an order management agent and say, optimize my safety stock for the following DCs, right? So there could be a lot of productivity gains, and it's one of those areas where people are like, well, we're going to get rid of jobs, blah, blah, blah. The reality is we're not doing that stuff today. We're barely keeping up. And so commerce is really where we've never even had the headcount to actually execute fully in a digital transformation. So now we're going to get that boost to be able to do and run our businesses the way that we've always wanted to, which is very exciting.
So that sounds really exciting. Agentic is a key part of, I think, this transformation is what you're saying here. Gaurav, I know, again, you guys, I think, have probably already started working in some of these areas, is what I suspect from, just this type of stuff. Can you, add anything to what Nat is saying? I know you've also talked in the past conversations about some of the things you guys are working on. How are you guys thinking about agentic and AI as a business in this space?
Yeah, sure. So I want to preface by saying we're pretty anti pushing technology on our customers. So AI is sort of not so welcome in our company yet, because we believe, the founders believe, and that mentality is still across the company, that let's ensure that we don't compromise even 5% of the customer experience because AI is not at 100%, right? And I cannot guarantee the 100%. So for example, we never went to chatbots because I know there's going to be some level of experience somewhere that's going to be hurt. So we never sort of implemented those. We keep it pretty manual because we want this is what customers come to B&H for, and we want to keep that. We don't want to. So we're sort of trying to figure out, right, how do we do this within that principle, within that culture. But there are a few places that I see that we're probably going to break through this this closeness of using AI. So agentic, you mentioned quite a bit. We haven't yet gotten into agentic purchasing or anything of that nature. I think, Laxman, you told me about that concept even before I even heard about that. So that's something that we'll probably go to at some point. But we have seen a spike on our website in terms of searches and marketing content bots from agents. So we know that train's coming, and that train's coming fast. So we're gonna have to kind of do something quick over there. Conversions are pretty high over there as well. Now, in terms of AI, we see a few places where AI can sort of help us. We are huge on content on our website, writing up a content. We have a big content team because we, for the most part, are reselling material as opposed to kind of, creating our own. We have some manufacturing on our own brands as well, but we sort of, resell a lot of things, a lot of brands. So we do a lot of write-up ourselves. Now, it's pretty hard to keep up. Is this content correct? Is it accurate? Is it updated? Because things change, right? What may be the best camera today may change pretty quickly in 2 months. So we have a big team that does a pretty good job, but we're using or trying to do a pilot to sort of see that if we can use AI to help improve that content, or just tell us what's wrong. We don't want to just copy and have it go creating content, because I know that's possible, but we're not there, and I don't think we'll ever get there. But it's telling us where we could do better. The other part is about that we're piloting today, and we may open it up to our customers, is comparing products. We think AI can do a great job on that. We have all our specs, and we could sort of allow any type of comparison. And there are some companies that have already started doing that. So we're looking into providing that level of content to our customers. In terms of interactions with our customers, we're looking into now chat for our B2B customers using some AI capabilities, which are pretty advanced as compared to what they were earlier with the help of Salesforce or Salesforce Shop. We're trying to look into some of that as well. And I think that would be pretty neat in terms of validating the customer, knowing who they are, logged in or not logged in, so we know we could kind of give them a personalized experience. It was a little bit harder with the chatbot world. With AI, I think that makes it a little bit easier. So we're looking into that as well. Big part of what I'm working on now is PO ingestion, right? When POs come in, we've provided a bid, we've provided a quote. On our side, 50 to 60% of our call center for B2B volume comes in from purchase order ingestion, which could be a lot.
People.
The people typing it in, entering it in, validating it against the bid, because there's no standard unless you're coming from EDI or somewhere, or CXML or some integration. There's no standard in terms of the format that people follow. You can get all sorts of documents. Ingesting those using AI to sort of normalize that content and ensuring that we can automate that will be a huge productivity help from our standpoint, right? We can actually, I don't want to say eliminate, but we can repurpose a huge amount of our human workforce to do other things. And more importantly, it's the SLA to the customer. If I can process that quickly, I could get things out quicker to them, and I can deliver things to them quicker.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big focus that we're working on today, because we never were able to keep up with the expectation on the volume on the B2B side. So this would help give us a little bit of a breather. One last thing that I would want to talk about is predicting orders from customers. I think we could use a little bit of AI for that, and we're looking into that as well, because on the B2B side, we see, at least in our business, okay, it might be different for others, a school has a end of year by December of the year. So we know that, okay, if they made a purchase last year in December, they're probably trying to deplete their budget, and they're going to come to us with something else. I could get ahead of that, and I could use AI to sort of predict that and kind of tell us that these are your opportunities, right? So to proactively reach out, or to kind of ensure we have the right amount of inventory. And that's something that we started implementing lately.
So going beyond just demand forecasting, you're talking about also using this to say not just in aggregate terms demand, but at a customer level, being able to predict that you could get these opportunities and enabling the sales team. Is that what you're talking about here, Gaurav?
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. I think, and everything you said, I think corroborated what Nat said, which is it's more AI assisted to help automate and to streamline processes. You're crawling today in the B2B world, and this is going to help you at least get more. Rob, did you have anything to add on these topics here?
I think the group nailed it right. I think, B2B has always been what I'll call kind of RPA focused in general. I think you're going to see an evolution of RPA first and accelerate towards much more AI use cases, but definitely further on the RPA side. Like I consider Gaurav, what you're talking about with the PO automation, that's kind of phase one of just RPA baseline. Then you apply some more AI to it. It'll just accelerate speeds. I think what Nat and Gaurav said spot on. Just driving further RPA that D2C has had for a long time, and then adding the AI components on it to accelerate is definitely what's going to happen. I think they nailed it.
Yep, fantastic. I want to quickly, I know we have 8 more minutes in the call, and I see there's a few questions, but I want to kind of open this up to the questions. And please, audience, if there's more questions, please post them. We can just take as many as we can here. First one from Raunak. Do we consider the OMS is still an underrated product to tackle B2B? Would it be right to say that the shift is there, but slow shift versus fast shift? I guess maybe Nat and then Rob, you guys may be able to tackle this best. Nat, do you want to take a crack at that first?
I mean, yeah, I would say for sure. I think, and I think we're still even struggling with commerce definition within B2B. So there's a lot of B2B organizations that are building their own portals, building their own systems for this, and not really looking at e-commerce technologies because they don't think of themselves as doing e-commerce. On the other hand, actually, on the vendor side, we see an underselling of B2B e-commerce. So the vendors that we see that are proposing these solutions may actually just be proposing sort of old portal technology, which is kind of funny. So it's definitely still underrated. And the shift, I don't know if it's slow or fast. I think there's a lot of people saying it's going to accelerate, but the TAM is not on the buy side. The TAM is not on the quoting and negotiations and submitting of orders. The TAM is on the demand side, actually, which is where, to Gaurav's point, you should know if this customer is going to buy. You should anticipate and predict what your business is going to be, and that's very ERP heavy. So the opportunity is actually for OMS to do a lot more than e-commerce by itself, which is very exciting.
On the sales side, yeah. Go ahead, Rob. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think to Nat's point, right, is definitely underrated, still underutilized across the board. We see a lot of our customers that have OMS products in the mix, and then they start talking about B2B, and we're like, well, yeah, guys, most of what you already have is capable of this. You just need to configure the rules, workflow, et cetera, to do it. The next big piece I'll say too, just about the shift, we've definitely seen what I'll call more of a mindful speed up, given the whole push for AI, kind of additional RPA capabilities, et cetera. That's also accelerating this because the need for flexibility, right? As you look at more of these OMS products, et cetera, the need to adopt AI is driving a lot of that too, because you get a lot more flexibility in the OMS tools than you do, back to Nat and Gaurav's point, in ERP. So I think it's both. It's definitely underutilized, but we're definitely starting to see a shift to speed up. I wouldn't say we're in like, 4th or 5th gear yet, but I would say we're probably between 2nd and 3rd, trying to go to climbing gear, but we're just not quite there yet.
Yeah, that's great insights. I think Gabriel's got a comment, but it's more of a comment. I don't know, Gabriel, if you're on the call and if you had a point to make here or a question to ask, or sounds like we covered a lot of this stuff.
All right.
I'll move on. Yep. I'll move on to, yeah, go ahead.
I'm just trying to highlight the challenges around B2B ordering, right? That ERP naturally handles, whereas the traditional B2C OMSs do not. Yeah.
Right. That makes sense. Karan, how do you typically handle aspects like price negotiation, payment terms, and delivery periods, which can vary widely by customer while still keeping the OMS scalable? From what Gaurav described, it sounds like the OMS primarily acts as an ingestion system rather than a direct ordering system where the customer interacts with it directly. That function can be achieved by ERP too. Yeah, maybe Nat, you can start with this again. How do you typically handle those aspects from an OMS product domain perspective is, I think, what the question is here.
I think I'd love to clarify the question a little bit. If they function, so there's the question if there's like duplicate functions between OMS and ERP, which do you pick? Is that the question?
Karan, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah.
I guess he's not on the call, so we can. Karan, are you on?
I'll take a stab at it. I'm just reading it right now. I think, well, first of all, within Kiba OMS, we already have price negotiations, payment terms, delivery periods. So we already have the workflows to handle those complex B2B use cases, plus the speed of a commerce OMS system, right? And you're asking yourself, well, I mean, I could use my ERP to do that. You can use your ERP as much as you want. At some point, it's going to be case by case. You're going to have to sit down and say, what am I also getting out of order management that I'm not getting out of my ERP? And how much of this order management do I want to implement? That's not going to be possible with all vendors. We see within Kibo, our OMS is very modular. And so we have a ton of clients that are using 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 microservices. And then what we find is over time, they like it so much that they start to migrate more functionality over. So we're definitely not suggesting a big bang digital transformation. I don't think anybody really wants that these days. We're more sort of pointing to a slow modernization that is incremental to help you save on cost, but continue to augment and extend what you currently don't have in your ERP.
So composability and agility is, I think, the key theme here is what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Makes
and
sense.
like considering, buying something to build on top of, right? That's also really important. It's something like Gaurav has said, like we've built, on top of these systems, and I don't like we shouldn't be pretending that that's not going to happen. Of course, it's going to happen. That's the reality of the world that we live in for B2B. So you have to make sure when you're selecting the right platform, like for example, one of the things I hear our chief product officer Sachin Sharma say all the time is at Kibo, we have actually more functionality at the API level than within the UI. And so when you have that kind of robust architecture, now you're free to create more custom attributes, more custom objects, right? More custom things that your
Customizability.
OMS can do for you. Exactly.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. I think there's one last question here on the chat. Workflows could be one primary aspect of configuring the rules. Would love to hear thoughts on workflows. And Rob, did you want to take that?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yeah, so 2-point flexibility. I think back to Nat Gaurav's point, kind of end to end here. What an OMS buys you is flexibility. ERPs are traditionally rigid. Obviously, with the new iterations, you're seeing a little more fluidity there. But traditionally, ERPs are rigid. OMS offers flexibility and even some capability to allow for additional flexibility, right? So workflow is definitely much more configurable in OMS world versus ERP. ERP is going to be, if I don't meet this rule criteria, I fail. Whereas OMS, right, I can meet X rule criteria and go through a different flow and still not error, right? You kind of gain a lot of benefits there. But yeah, end of the day, workflow is definitely king from an OMS perspective. And that's kind of back to the same point of how much flexibility do you really need? If you have standard flow business all day long, fill the same product types, et cetera, OMS may not be a good benefit for you, right? You probably don't need it. But if you really are more of a modern age business and looking for flexibility, capability, OMS is definitely the direction to go from a B2B perspective.
And the market, I think, is pushing in that direction as well in terms of flexibility and adaptability. I think we're right on time, so I really want to be mindful of everybody's time. And I really want to thank all of you here. Gaurav, thank you so much for joining from India. I know it's late. It's almost, 9:30 p.m. On a Friday evening. Really appreciate you joining. Robert, thanks for sharing all your insights here from your years of experience in this domain. And Nat, really appreciate all the wisdom from you as an application vendor. Thanks to everybody here in the panel. Really appreciate this. Is very insightful. And until next time, thank you.